were so quick about things. I think I've been following you for like 2 years, like since starting my research, and I'd taken a million screenshots of your posts, and there was such helpful tips. I was constantly surprised by the help I was getting from your team, by the interactions I was having with you. Every single sentence that I had said that could be improved, I was told that this is where this is where it's lacking. This is how you improve it. They didn't tell me, they didn't put words in my mouth. That's not what they did. But they told me the real deal. The flow was really great, and that's what I love.
Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan. I'm the founder and chief consultant of Management Masters, and we are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA programs around the world. Today we have Palak Nayyar with us. Palak worked with us for his mock interview, for her mock interview preparation for Vanderbilt Owen MBA program, and she ended up receiving admits from McDonough and Vanderbilt Owen as well, along with a Forte Foundation scholarship. So let's hear it from Palak. It's great to have you here with us, Palak. Lovely to sort of hear about, and very excited to hear about your journey as such so far. So could you just give us a brief introduction about yourself and where you're coming from a little bit?
Sure. Thank you so much, Piyush, for having me. First of all, I feel really great being here. Especially with an admit, I think it's really great. So yeah, I'm happy to go into where I'm coming from. So I am a CPA, which stands for Certified Public Accountant, which is basically the CA equivalent of the US. And I graduated bachelor's in 2015, and since then, I've been working with KPMG as a statutory auditor, and I've basically worked with the UK territory. And in the UK territory with financial services firms. So a few of the biggest firms in the world I've worked with, sorry, not at a liberty to say the names because they're not listed clients, but they are a few of the biggest firms in the world. So yeah, that was my experience. For about 6 years, 9 months. I've just concluded that job on Friday. That was my last working day.
Perfect.
I am just preparing for the summer before the MBA with my pre-reading and just building my skills and building my resume and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting times.
Perfect. That sounds absolutely amazing. But could you give us a bit of an insight into how exactly the CPA works, or did you also do a proper graduation or a normal graduation from an Indian college, or did you just pursue the CPA separately on the side? How exactly does it work? If you could tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, sure, of course. I did my Bachelor's of Commerce honors from DU. So I am a product of Delhi University, Delhi College of Arts and Commerce. And that was a fantastic experience. And after that, I was placed on campus by KPMG in the audit department. So I went from audit associate to assistant manager in a span of 6 years, 9 months. I also had a chance to work in the UK, which I think was a really good plus in my experience, my profile as well. I worked for 6 months in the UK on the client side. So I have had a lot of client interaction throughout my career. I think which was also a big plus because, client interactions matter a lot. Especially, I think thinking that my post-MBA goal is on the consulting end mostly.
Okay.
So experience really matters.
So in terms of your career, you seem to be having quite a nice career. You've been working with KPMG. You've been moving quite steadily upwards. You've had some international stints. You seem to love the fact that you had so many client interactions, right? So what exactly propelled you towards looking out for an MBA at this stage of time?
So I think I'll build the answer to this question, from CPA. So why I did CPA in the first place, if I had to do an MBA later on anyway. But, when I started my CPA, I was, I think, 3 years into my career, I think 2.5, 3 years into audit, and I was absolutely loving it because it was all new for me. And I was learning quite a lot, I think, in terms of accounting and everything. And I really loved accounting. And CPA is for people who love accounting. If you don't love accounting, you'll probably not end up clearing the exams. They're quite tough. The pass percentage is low, and the amount you need to pass is very high. So even I took a couple of attempts to clear that. So yeah, and I think at some level I always wanted to end up in the US. So that's why also I pursued my CPA. And I think as I grew in trajectory, my role also came, I also came in contact with a lot of people focused roles. So I became a performance manager. I started, managing first 5 to 6 people. And then towards the end of my career, just that I've just concluded, I had like 30 people to manage as an
Okay.
assistant manager. And that was in addition to all the client work that I was already doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that my people focused role was very less. And my client work was definitely, 80%. I think it was like an 80-20 split. I was mostly
Mm-hmm.
working on clients on there, and obviously, as I had grown, all of that had become really not very basic accounting, I would say, complex accounting procedures. But I
Okay.
think at some point after my London secondment, I think when I had the chance to, sit on the client side and talk to
Yep.
CFOs, talk to managing directors, like so often, like, on an everyday basis, I was talking to CFOs, financial controllers. I thought that, there is probably, room for me to sit on the other side of the table and do the strategizing, because, a lot of times we would ask about the strategy and we would audit that strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I thought I wanted to be on the formulating side, strategy formulating side. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was my motivation. So when I returned from the UK, I started researching, what can I do to be in these shoes, the shoes of the CFO. And then I found out that, all of them, 99.99% of them had MBAs.
Okay.
And that's how my research started. So I think 2019, 2020 beginning, my research started, and 2022 I've landed that, finally landed that to that place where I'm going to pursue that for myself now. So
And that makes so much sense. And I really like the kind of logical rationale that you brought into this. Again, a very, very clear hallmark of an auditor and a financier, right? But I think this is something which we often see with candidates, right? A lot of candidates who often reach out, they are usually not very clear on their career goals, and they don't really know what do they want to do, and they want to apply to the MBA to sort of get clarity on what they want to do, right? And we often tell them that, okay, even if you don't have specific goals, it's very important to figure out some sort of area that you really want to explore, or area of interest that you want to have, which will allow you to navigate the MBA path itself, right? And then when you go in, you can absolutely find something completely new and then sort of go dive deeper into that. But at least have some semblance of a direction before you go into the MBA. And this is something that you sort of brought out very, very interestingly, that you knew you still want to remain in finance. It's just that you want to be on the other side of the table, right? So that makes so much sense, and such a nice logical sort of rational approach to this. So once you started doing that, could you tell us about what was the biggest apprehension that you had before you started working on your applications, or as you were working on your applications, if any?
I think my apprehensions were more, personal rather than professional. I think I knew at some point, because, I had progressed and I knew that I was capable of hard work and getting what I wanted. I knew that. But I think my apprehensions were more personal, because, as a female, I was already in my mid 20s. When I returned, I was already 25. And you know how sometimes, in things in India go that you have to get married or something like that. And thankfully, I think I'm very grateful that my parents have not put that kind of pressure on me. They probably said it once or twice. They asked me, in fact, and I said no, and they were fine with that. I think I'm very lucky in that way,
Mhm.
that not everybody gets that opportunity to say no, and I was able to do that. And then I think after that, my confidence really increased when my parents showed confidence in me. My confidence really in myself, it increased. That yeah, I think I can pull it off. I just need to do a little bit more research. I need to get a little bit more specific about my goals, and then I think I'll be able to pull it off. I just didn't expect, obviously, nobody expected a pandemic. I think I expected to go
Absolutely.
much earlier than this. I think I was half expecting to be done by now. But I'm going to be
Mhm.
starting at 28, which is
Yeah.
another very, lucky thing that, my parents are still, that
Yeah.
conversation happened at 25. I'm 28 when I'm going, I'll be 28 when I reach there. Couple
Yeah.
months later, I'll be 28, and then I'll be done by 30 or so.
Yeah.
So, I think, my apprehensions were more personal than professional. I think at some level, I knew that I'd be able to pull it off. I'm
Yeah.
capable of hard work. I've, yeah, probably known that I'm not maybe, brilliant or something like that, like
Mhm.
academically. I've been okay. I've been good, above average all my life. But I also knew that, with hard work and consistency, those are my USPs.
Mhm.
So that's where I thrive, with consistency and hard work. I might not be the brightest one in the classroom or the workplace, but I can pull it off. So I think those things were very clear in my mind. I was just scared about the societal kind of thing, but that I got over it quite quickly. Thanks
All
to
right,
the fact.
that sounds good. Yeah. Now, when you go into the application process, when you start working on that, right? Obviously, there's so many different steps that are working towards the MBA application, right? And the first thing that usually comes up, obviously, is the GMAT score, the GRE score, the test scores, essentially. And you have had a very interesting sort of journey with that. So I would love to hear more about that. How did you sort of decide which test did you want to take, and why did you take that? If you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think first of all, I'd already done my CPA by this point, So I thought that GMAT would be a piece of cake for me. I think that's where my overconfidence kind of set me back a little bit. I should not have thought it to be that easy. In fact, I don't think I thought that it was easy. I just thought I'd be able to do it since I did the CPA, which is considered much harder, of an exam. It's a proper qualification, and GMAT is just an entrance. So, but honestly, I don't think that I should have taken it that lightly. And I should have started a little bit earlier. I started a bit late, studying a bit late. And what happened was, and I was going through, I think, a lot of different companies. I would not name them, obviously, but I didn't find all of them very convincing. So I think 2, 3 different companies I went through, very popular names in India and abroad. And I think I ended up spending a lot of money, which was not an issue, honestly. I was employed full time, so that was not an issue, but it did kind of hamper my confidence. I ended up thinking, I'm not even able to study for the GMAT, and I'm not able to get the score that I want. How am I going to do an MBA? And I think that's a pitfall that a lot of people end up falling into, thinking that if they can't do the GMAT, they can't do an MBA. I don't think
Mhm.
that there is a direct correlation. It's a way for schools to kind of just low
Evaluate and understand where you're coming from. Exactly.
exactly, but it's not, it's doing well on the GMAT is not going to lead you to doing directly. There's no direct correlation there that you'll do well in the MBA and then you'll do well in the job. So I think the minute I realized this, uh, I stopped being attached to the GMAT. I had gotten too
Mhm.
attached to the GMAT. I thought I have given this 6, 7 months, and how can I leave it now? How can I think about GRE or something else? And but
It almost sounds like relationship advice at this point of time. You know?
yeah, truly, I think you're very, very correct here that we get attached to something that's not working for us,
Yeah.
and we get too attached because we've already and we grow up in a country where it's a developing country, and hard work has always been told to us that hard work is really important and you should never give up. But I think smartness is knowing when to give up on something,
Mhm.
right? I had a full-time job and I was doing audit. If somebody watching is in audit, they would know the hours are absolutely mad.
Yep.
you know I've done 60 hours, I've done 70 hours, I've also done 80 hours. And if I tell you that to study something as intense as the GMAT, along with that, I used to wake up at 5 in the morning, and I used to log off around like 9, 10 sometimes from my work, and then study again. And even then it was not working for me. And then I thought to myself, okay, what am I working towards? Is it the GMAT or is it the MBA? What's the main goal? The main goal
Mhm.
is MBA. I'm not working towards a GMAT mastery, right? That's not where it ends. Even a 740 is not going to guarantee me any kind of admission to any college. And that's when I think I started researching. So what else can I do? I researched the GRE, but then
Mhm.
I realized that the syllabus was kind of a little bit different, at least for verbal. And then
Yeah.
I went a little bit deeper into it. Then that's when I found the executive assessment, which is an exam which GMAC makes. And it is
Yeah.
practically, I would say, I think 90% of the syllabus is the same, barring some concepts in quant. It's just a shorter GMAT. Basically, it's
Yeah.
a shorter GMAT. It's like a 90-minute GMAT. And I was surprised to see that a lot of really great schools that were already on my radar were accepting the
The
executive.
executive assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I ended up writing to a lot of these schools just to understand their expectations, because the executive assessment was fairly new. I think it's caught on now a little bit,
Yeah.
but back when I was researching, it was very, very new, and there was not a lot of data available as to what score is what percentile. I didn't know anything. So I ended up writing to these schools, and they were very responsive. So also that's also a kind of mattered into what schools I applied to. And these
Mhm.
schools told us that this is our expectation, and obviously, this is not set in stone, but this is the expectation, and I knew what to work towards then. And the executive assessment I was able to crack in my first attempt because I'd already studied for the GMAT. So if you've already spent time on your GMAT, the executive assessment should not be much tougher. Maybe put in a maybe month more, and then take the assessment.
Yeah.
So
I think that is something again that was great that you did, was essentially going down to really realizing what is it that the schools want. The schools are not looking for GMAT whizzes and sort of wizards and like masters of GMAT. They're looking for simply a proof of the fact that you will be able to handle the academics of the MBA program, right? And if you're able to do that with the GMAT, that's great. If you're able to do that with the GRE, that's great. If you're able to do that with the executive assessment, that's also great, right? It depends on what the schools are looking at. But let me ask you this. Obviously, the executive assessment worked out quite well in your favor. That makes a lot of sense. But then there are obviously much lesser number of schools which accept the executive assessment, right? So did that have a huge effect in terms of which schools did you want to apply to, or like was it that most of the schools that you were looking at they accepted the executive assessment?
I think before the executive assessment came into picture, I was kind of all over the place, I'll be honest. There were some schools from the US that were on my radar, some schools from Europe that were on my radar. And I was, all over the place. So, I didn't really, even with the GMAT, a 690 might have mattered in some schools and not in the other schools. So I was kind of all over the place. But with the executive assessment, I think it kind of forced me when I saw that, and it was mostly US schools, at least at the time that I was researching, it was mostly just US schools that was accepting for the full-time MBA. And it forced me to take a deeper look at my goals once again and see which of those schools fit to my agenda. And I think I got really lucky that so many of those schools were, really great schools. So I think I didn't end up applying to Columbia, but even Columbia accepts the executive assessment for their full-time, MBA. So, if anybody's watching wants to take that seriously, please go ahead. If that school matches your goals, and if you can get away with an executive assessment, because, you've got a full-time job, you've got, home responsibilities, and sometimes it's just not possible to do something as intense as a GMAT. And I don't mean it in a way to, downplay GMAT, but just look at your goals. Look at your goals. If you're not planning to go to investment banking, so like I am still not. Investment banking is not my goal. They probably see the GMAT score, but the firms that I want to go to, the area that I want to go to, they don't really, for them, the GMAT doesn't really matter. So it was a really, and then it became an easier decision for me. It forced me to take a, good look at my goals, and then, streamline where I wanted to apply. If the school fits me and if I fit the school.
All right, that makes again a lot of sense, and again it shows a tremendous amount of sort of maturity in the decisions that you've taken, or the rationale that you have sort of adopted while you were selecting your schools, right? Now, in terms of the school selection, one thing that I've really understood from you is that the goals that you had, they played a huge role in terms of identifying the schools that you wanted to go to. Another thing that I see from you is the location that you're looking at, right? That you were very focused on the US. Were there any other things that you sort of focused on while sort of understanding or identifying which schools did you want to apply to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm not a very competitive person. So that was very important to me, that I go in a place where, everybody is not trying to top each other, but helping each other.
Okay.
So mostly those are the schools that I applied to. So Vanderbilt, has a reputation for being a good, like a friendly school.
Very
and
collaborative school, yeah.
Exactly. McDonough, the same thing. And, and this I realized after talking to a lot of schools. I spoke to people from 9 or 10 different schools, and then I streamlined to 3 or 4 that I wanted to apply to. And those interactions were really helpful.
So this is again something great that you bring up, which usually does not come up with a lot of candidates, right? You're essentially talking about the fit qualities with the school. And this is such an important part of it, the kind of values that you have and how do they align with the school's values that you're looking at. And this is such an important part of sort of utilizing the B schools that you want to apply to and where you want to spend the next 2 years of your life, right? It's incredibly important. And kudos to you for doing that. That's absolutely amazing. Now, coming to the next part of this, which is the applications itself, right? So you're applying to Vanderbilt, you're applying to McDonough. How did you approach the applications? How did you work on the essays? And something that really helped you out through that process, if you could sort of help share a bit.
Yeah. I think the first step that I did was obviously just make a list of all the questions that they were asking. And that kind of gives you an idea of what the school is looking for.
Mhm.
So, I think that was the first step that I did. And then I had to look for a consultant, because I thought that I wanted, a consultant. And honestly, at that point, I had spent so much money on the GMAT. And, I was very apprehensive of spending another big amount. So what
Yeah.
I did was I took a very unconventional route. I think it's unconventional in India. So I took applicant lab. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure if you know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, I think maybe as a consultant, probably you know about applicant lab, but a lot of, maybe people who are viewing this don't know about it. And it's a very good, and I didn't choose it just because it was cheap, but because it was, run by a person whose credentials are very, unmatched.
Yeah.
So, it was, I think it cost me like 25K at that, whatever exchange rate that was. Right now, we can't talk about the exchange rates in India.
Yeah. So now
Yeah,
it's going to be a bit different. Yeah.
yeah. So at that point, it cost me around 25K. And I think I got like an additional 10% off even of that. And it was such good advice, So you just enter your schools and they give you like very, very, very like streamlined,
Specific
narrowed
advice
down
about the
advice.
schools.
Yeah. Like what does that school specifically want? And then I was able to, write down my stories and then just match it to their values because I already had stories. Right. I'm an
Mhm.
assistant manager. I've been 7 years. So I have all kind of stories. I have all kind of
Yeah.
negotiation stories. I have, dealing with difficult people, difficult clients. I have all those stories with me, leading teams. But I
Yeah.
just have to match it to the values. So that's a strategy that I think, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Uh, I think I'm just going to edit out everything in this.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I think one of the reasons probably it worked out for you so well was essentially because of the self-awareness that you bring with it, right? I think that becomes probably one of the most difficult parts to work on, especially when you're doing it on your own,
Yeah.
right? And it's not that nobody applies without a consultant. Absolutely, there are tons of people who do that. But one thing that consistently sort of stands out in all those people like yourself would be that they are tremendously self-aware. As you said, you applicant lab helped you sort of point yourself in the direction of, okay, this is what they want,
But
right?
again, it was
uh,
effort. Yeah.
but you need to put in that effort to bring out that, okay, I have this, right?
Yeah.
You know what you have, right? So I think that works out pretty well. uh, Now, what would you say throughout this entire process was the most interesting or the most difficult part for you in the MBA application process itself?
I think talking to people, honestly, I think we don't pay that much attention to it in India. We have a lot of, technical, even in our interviews and stuff, we go more technical. And I used to conduct interviews for KPMG as well. So, my agenda was always technical questions. And when it comes to talking to people, understanding their perspectives, making small talk, because you have to start with small talk and get to know them, understand their stories, why they applied, what's their goal. It's difficult. And I thought of myself as a fairly confident person when it comes to communication. Again, so many years spent in the corporate world kind of just organically does that to you. But when I started interacting with adcoms, one-on-ones were the most, I think, the most difficult for me. Then I started reaching out to students. So I had to overcome this fear that, I kept telling myself I'm an introvert, I can't talk to people, but it's a fact, still a fact that I'm still an introvert. It's
Yeah.
not become an extrovert all of a sudden, but to get to your goals, you have to, overcome your fears. It was just from, getting outside the comfort zone. I reached out to like a million people, and out of a million people, some of them are going to respond to you, and then you have to talk to them one on one. So
Yeah.
you need to be very prepared. I think the first 2 3 calls were a little bit, like that for me
A
because
bit dicey. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't prepared with questions. I just
Yeah.
went in thinking that I'd be able to run the call.
Yeah.
But then I learned that, I should have questions written down. with a pen and paper or with a notes app or something like that. And then it really helped me run the conversation. And if that works for you, do that. If you think you can run the conversation without pen and paper and without being prepared, do that. Just do what works for you. But I think in India we haven't done those coffee chat stuff. We never done that in college, like never had to do. And in the US there's a culture, you'll have to do it. And I think even for European schools I didn't have to reach out to anyone, to be honest. Like I'd never reached out to anyone. But US schools, you have to reach out to people, you have to talk to them, and
Yep.
one on one you have to talk to them, not just the not just the group meetings. So that was very challenging for me, and I didn't expect it to be challenging for myself. So that kind of caught me by surprise. But I think I discovered that I can, and there's a certain way of me doing it that makes me feel comfortable, which is being prepared, just being like absolutely prepared. Right.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. Uh, so when you reached out to us, you essentially reached out to us after you had received your interview invites and you were seeking help for the mock interviews, right? So could you help us understand like why exactly were you looking for help with the mock interviews? Because you seem to be a fairly confident person. You've been running interviews yourself. So what exactly were you looking for, and why did you sort of decide to work with us for the mock interviews?
I think I wanted to have mock interviews for the very similar reason that, when I was in those casual chats with students and adcoms, I was struggling,
Mhm.
and that's when I realized that, okay, just because I've been good in my corporate world, my communication in my corporate world doesn't mean that it will translate similarly into my, interviews. And every place has
Mhm.
a different culture. I've not worked with US clients. I've only worked with UK clients. So, and, I wanted to have, and I really wanted somebody really experienced to help bridge this gap for me, because I didn't even know this was a gap before I had started interacting. And when I realized it's a gap, I knew I needed help.
Mhm.
And I had been following you on LinkedIn for a very long time. So, and I was always really very invested. I had taken screenshots of so many things that you had said, and I used to like save them down in a group that I'd made for myself, just myself, and to go through whatever tips and tricks you written. So I was kind of pretty clear that I wanted help from you. So when the time came, when I got the interview decisions, and even before I think I got the interview decisions, I reached out to you. I said I might
Mhm.
end up getting a decision, because I've had a very positive interaction with the adcoms and the students. So please could you help me? And you were so helpful about that, and you were so quick about things. I think I've been following you for like 2 years, like since
Okay.
starting my research, and I'd taken a million screenshots of your posts, and there was such helpful tips,
That's,
and
that's very
that's why kind of made.
flattering to hear. So, could you tell us about like how did it entirely work out for you? What did you like with respect to the mock interview prep, and anything that you think that we might want to improve further in the future?
I think I got actually Harsh and Ankit for my interviews, and both of their credentials, first of all speak for themselves. And it's not just about like a tag; it's about how they got there. They got that credential after a lot of hard work from their side. So
Mhm.
you can actually trust them with your life. When it comes to interviews, when it comes to all of that, all of those preparation. So I was very confident when I went to the interview mock. The first one was I think with Ankit, and it caught me by surprise. Again, I thought I would do well, and I didn't. And he
Okay.
gave me such. He first of all he made me so comfortable. I think he was such a nice person. He made me so comfortable. He had taken out time from his day. I think he was still. I think he'd been in his classes and stuff, but he'd taken time of his day, and he made me feel so comfortable right from the start. And then when I didn't do well, his way of communicating constructive feedback was really helpful.
Mhm.
It really helps you internalize that feedback, because it's not criticism, it's constructive criticism. And it was very, very pinpointed. I think I've mentioned it to you like maybe like a million
Yeah.
times, how much I loved the fact that it was so pinpointed. I think he had a feedback on every single sentence that I had said wrong. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
not to the
Okay.
mark, not wrong, but some things that can be improved.
Yeah.
And I could see him taking down notes, during the interview, and he had very specific points. And I took, and the recording, obviously, I watched that recording thrice before
Mhm.
going into the next mock interview. And I think that helped me do a lot better. If I was maybe like a 3 on 10 in the first interview, I was a 7 I was easily a 7 or an 8 in the next interview with Harsh. And despite of me thinking that, I might have got everything out of that, Ankit interview, I was wrong again. Then again, 10 more points Harsh got out in the second mock. And
Yeah.
that, and that I was constantly surprised by the help I was getting from your team, by the interactions I was having with you,
Yeah.
with the interactions I was having with them, and such pinpointed advice. I was half expecting it to be, I was so, I think, drained by then, with the application process, that I was thinking I'm just gonna get some general points, but it was not that. Every single sentence that I had said that could be improved, I was told that, this is where this is where it's lacking. This is how you improve it. They didn't tell me, they didn't put words in my mouth. That's not what they did. But they told me the real deal. They
Yeah.
told me this is what you missed out. Like, I've seen your resume and you've completely missed out this really important point. And that's going to be really important. Talk about it. Talk about it in this question. Don't talk about it in that question. Talk about it in this question. So it was that, it flew. I mean, the flow was really great. And that's what I love. I'm the kind of person who enjoys, getting feedback. I've realized that as well, because it makes me, helps me become aware of my problems and, the blind sides that I have to work upon.
Yep.
And because of that, I was, able to probably perform a 9 on 10, or maybe even a 10 on 10 in the
We
interview.
call it a 10 on 10. You got the good positive results, right? So
Yeah. I got through both of those schools that I've got invites from, and that was, such a great thing. And I messaged you. I think the day I got the McDonough, it's the one I messaged you, and I think even after the interview had gone by, I messaged you that it went well. As for me, it had gone well. You get a kind of sense that how it went, and it was.
that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And I think it obviously it comes from the amount of experience that both these people have, right? I think Harsh has taken, if not at least 80 in mock interviews with me, right? At the same time, he has served on the ISB actual interview panel for quite a while, and then he stopped doing that. But he has sort of taken like a huge amount of mock interviews with us. The same goes for Aniket. Aniket had been helping us with multiple different applications and with interview preps. So both of them, they came with a lot of experience and very, very clear insights into the overall process itself, right? So this is tremendous feedback, and I absolutely love hearing about both of them, right?
Yeah.
Because they have been so
Prepared as
instrumental.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were
they've
so
been,
prepared as well. Like my resume, they had my resume, and it
yeah,
clearly showed, when they were giving me feedback, it clearly showed how well they had gone over each and everything that I had written in my resume also. Because they were able to tell me that you missed this, or you included this for no reason, it can be skipped.
yeah.
Or yeah, they told me where I looked nervous, and they even told me that you've got a shine in your eyes in this question. Try to bring that shine in that, shine in the other questions
Other
also.
questions as well. Yeah,
So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think that really helped me. I was very aware during, and that's why, because of that, those experiences, those mocks, I was very aware during my actual interviews, how how I was conducting myself, how I was sitting, and how I had to have that shine in my eyes, in every question, not just one or two, but all the
Yeah,
questions. And
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. That sounds absolutely incredible. And let's move towards the last part of the overall interview that we have. We call it the rapid fire. No marks for guessing what it is going to be about, right? A few questions, four to five questions, and we'll very quickly sort of talk about them. What we're expecting is essentially one word or one sentence answers, right? So let's start with that. The first question that I have is, what is the biggest myth about MBA applications that you have realized through your own process?
that the GMAT is of utmost importance.
That's
Explore more.
I'm not going to argue with that at all. Uh, the biggest, the most interesting part of the application process that you found.
The essays. I think I absolutely loved reflecting on myself, and it really
Mhm.
helped me become even more aware than I was. While writing these stories, I was kind of realizing, oh, I have these qualities, and that's amazing.
Okay, that's nice. The worst part of the application that you did not enjoy at all.
I think the preparation for the GMAT, the
Executive
executive
assessment.
assessment, I did
Okay,
not definitely.
okay. one event, club, or activity at Vanderbilt Owen that you're really, really looking forward to?
I think I'm really looking forward to working with their finance club. So, I want to work in finance long term, whether in a, like a corporate finance side, or corporate or finance strategy. So I'm kind of hoping to be part of their finance symposium. And yeah, that's something I'm really excited for. And of course, the Women's Business Association. That's fantastic.
Perfect. So we come to the last question. One piece of advice that you'll give to future candidates who are preparing for their MBA programs.
I think don't lose sight of your ultimate goal, which I think in short term is getting to an MBA and long term is getting to the career that you want. So the small parts will come together if you don't lose sight of, your end goal. So like I said, my goal was not to become a GMAT master, but an MBA. So if I had given up just because I wasn't able to do on my four or so attempts in GMAT, I would not have landed if I would have given up, obviously, would not have landed these two schools. I think just keep sight of that and keep exploring alternatives, keep talking to people. Alternatives will come through. Like that flows.
That's absolutely incredible to hear. Thank you so much, Palak. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we wish you the best with your future endeavors, with your MBA program, and with your future career.